Hi guys, feel free to like and subscribe if you're getting something out of this content. And this one is sort of a difficult subject to cover, but I've had some requests for, is my partner a sex addict or a narcissist that also has sex porn addiction? It is very hard to tell the difference, or it can be. So the majority of cases of actually diagnosed narcissistic personality disorder are male. Doesn't mean that there aren't a lot of undiagnosed female narcissists. There certainly are. And you have to keep in mind, this is a very strong defense system that is created originally in childhood, usually to protect the individual. It's the idea that the world revolves around them. It's a defense system of pathological self-centeredness. So with the overts, they typically have, as we know, the huge ego, very self-confident, appearing anyway, but they make others feel less than. And at the first level, it's like they come across as having this very high level of confidence, and they may even think that. But really, beneath it, it's because they're so guarded and pained internally that they can show no true vulnerability or weakness. The pain for narcissists is very deeply buried. They might not even be aware of it. Covert or vulnerable narcissists, as you know, present differently from the overt. They want to seem perfect, very good, maybe with the halo effect, better than average. They want to come across as a person with a very high level of integrity. Well, with sex addicts, they can also present very similarly. When they're in the thick of their addiction, they can present as good, like perfect, the perfect husband, perfect wife, the perfect church member, perfect family member. A good indicator that one big difference, and this is weird because it can be true for sex addicts. If you're in a relationship with a sex addict or a narcissist, you can have that crazy making feeling and confusion while you're in the relationship. Sex addicts can present very narcissistic. Not all sex addicts present as narcissists, but many do. When a sex addict, one differentiation is when a sex addict gets into therapy or recovery, they start to allow vulnerability, right? They start to tell the truth. They tend to dig deep. If a narcissist sex addict gets into recovery, they're not going to allow true vulnerability or be honest. A sex addict gets into recovery, what usually happens is they start to have empathy, actual empathy for others. Sex addicts can also be extremely defended in their shame to hide their addiction, and they can present very narcissistically. But I would say a big primary distinction between a sex addict and a narcissist who's also has sex addiction problems is the willingness to seek help, to start telling the truth, to start disclose the truth about what they did in their sex addiction, owning the harm and the pain they caused, and taking some personal responsibility. Sex addicts will actually do the actual work, and at some point, they will stop gaslighting their partner. Narcissists, unfortunately, can also present to, this is the tricky part, they can present to be doing all the things, checking the boxes, especially covert narcissists who get into recovery. So it can still be very difficult to differentiate. But if the partner is still feeling a profound lack of empathy, if the person is still keeping up their defenses and not allowing true vulnerability or showing any signs of empathy, then they may be a narcissist. Typically, if a narcissist goes to therapy to help his or her wife or husband to treat the sex addiction, and they have a really good therapist who is able to sort of call out the narcissist and, encourage them to get vulnerable, to show empathy and take responsibility, then often what you'll see is the narcissist will actually devalue the therapist, right? Because they will hate the therapist for trying to break past their defenses. But and they could be, a narcissist could be using therapy to further gaslight or manipulate and not take any personal responsibility. That's a sign that it's a narcissist. So, listen to your intuition. If this person is in, recovery for sex addiction, if they're doing work around it, if they're going to therapy, but are they still engaging? Are you still having those crazy making feelings? Do you still feel like you're being gaslighted? Or are you feeling your partner's return to empathy, to their true self? Not a fake display of empathy, but you feel it. Typically, if a narcissist is in couples therapy, they're not going to allow true vulnerability. They're going to try to keep the focus off themselves onto their partner or the couple's issues, right? And they're going to continue to evade personal responsibility. If a narcissist, it's really, well, for both, it's really important that they get their own therapy. But if they're a narcissist, they're probably not going to do that. They're going to assume that they're smarter than the therapist. Sometimes narcissist sex addicts will be dragged to therapy by their partner, and what they may use that forum for is to further manipulate and gaslight. And they may use it to continue to look good to their family or to their affair partner, to be like, I checked the box, I went to therapy. But if they do that, they may continue to lie in every single session. They keep their defenses up, and they're doing it just to look good. So in therapy, a narcissist may try and still make their partner look like the crazy one. They tend to use projection and deflection in the therapy sessions, and they'll try to make the partner look insane or focus on couples issues again, instead of taking any personal responsibility. A sex addict, once they start getting into recovery, they will start to share their truth at a group level, and they will typically seek help. They will start to take ownership for the pain that they've caused, and they will, admit the truths about their sex addiction. The narcissist will and if they're a sex addict with these highly narcissistic behaviors, they're going to start dissipating when the sex addict tells the truth to the therapist, to the group, and eventually to their partner. And once they come out of the darkness and their secrets, and they allow the vulnerability, they don't have to defend the secret life anymore, and they start to take true ownership. Of course, we know that secrecy leads to attachment wounds and a lack of connection, and honesty is the way out of the highly narcissistic behaviors that sex addicts may show. There's a quote in 12-Step Recovery that we are as sick as our secrets. But sometimes, you'll see both sex addicts and narcissists tended to grow up in families with secrets where you're not allowed to tell the truth or show any vulnerability. But I think with sex addicts that are not narcissists, they're going to have this internal sort of exhaustion. It's tiring for them to keep leading these double lives and keeping up the pretense and the false mask, and it gets very depleting and draining. And I think with a narcissist, that doesn't typically happen. They're so disassociated from their true inner self, their inner core, so they don't feel necessarily depleted, and they actually maybe get some satisfaction from their secrecy and from leading the double life, like they kind of get off on it. But a true addict will come to terms with the deep costs of their addiction, and they'll want to live differently. And a true addict may say, I'm done paying this high price. I don't want to pay it anymore. I don't want to be this way anymore. I need to start telling the truth, get honest, and start to get in touch with my true self that I've been hiding. But typically a narcissist will not face this or get honest. I heard this thing: while in trauma, we use coping mechanisms that we feel ashamed of. But if you're an addict and you need to come to terms with your addiction, it's a beautiful thing for you to start having compassion for yourself and for your willingness to seek help and recovery. Start to have some empathy for yourself. Shame tends to be the driving force behind both sex addiction and narcissism. But at some point in their lives, sex addicts typically will start to seek some help, but not so with narcissists. And they'll do their own work. It won't just be them going to couples therapy to appease, their partner or to not lose their partner. And eventually, do they have the ability for some sort of introspection, some amount of self-awareness or empathy? Then if not, then they're likely I mean, if they have that ability to empathize a little bit, or a little bit of introspection, a little bit of self-awareness, then they're probably not a narcissist. If you look up at the DSM-5 on narcissism, it says, and keep in mind, this is more describing more of an overt narcissist, but it's both, but some covert narcissists are going to present somewhat differently. But it says that they have a grandiose sense of self-importance, a preoccupation with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love, a belief that he or she is special, unique, and can only be understood or associate with other special or high-status people or institutions, a need for excessive admiration, a sense of entitlement, interpersonally exploitative behavior, a lack of empathy, envy of others, or belief that others are envious of him or her, and a demonstration of arrogant and haughty behaviors or attitudes. So, one thing with narcissism is, they don't have an ability to introspect or to have any level of self-awareness. And that is typically a pretty defining characteristic of narcissism. I know this isn't a perfect explanation. I've been searching high and low and researching it, and it can be very difficult to tell the difference between somebody who is a sex addict, because they often engage in gaslighting, manipulation, like all the same things that narcissists behave or engage in, and addicts, whatever form of addiction, they can have highly narcissistic tendencies and behaviors. I guess the difference is their willingness to seek help. Like, are they willing to seek help? Are they willing to get honest? Are they willing to go to therapy on their own? Are they willing to start telling the truth? Are they willing to tap into their empathy and to take some personal responsibility for the harm and the pain that they've caused their partner? Or are there attempts at therapy all performative to show that they're a good guy or a good girl that went to therapy, right? So I think that's those are some, maybe some helpful differences. But I think it's a difficult one this is a really tough one to do a video on, because it is not very clear cut. Again, sex addicts and all sorts of addicts, alcohol addicts, drug addicts, sex addicts, porn addicts, they can all engage in very narcissistic behaviors and appear sometimes almost sociopathic. But I guess the biggest thing is, are they getting help? Are they going to therapy? Are they willing to take some personal responsibility? Are they willing to start telling the truth? Because honesty is the key out of addiction. Honesty and self-awareness and introspection and community support. So I hope you guys are all doing well and thriving, and I hope this video was helpful. Bye-bye.